Thrifting and buying secondhand has become a trend nowadays in the time of environmental crisis. It's catching on in Korea too, with the vintage clothing shops and online platform for secondhand goods popping up more and more. But it's been a taboo for a long time to buy or pick up a used object with unclear origin, because it might be haunted. That's right, it's another episode about haunted objects. There are already a few episodes under the same subject. In case you missed them, the links are in the description and at the corner of the screen. The particular no-nos were wooden objects because wood was believed to have close affinity to spirits, mirrors because it used to reflect the likeness of the previous owner, dolls because their likeness to humans, clothes or jewelry because they were intimately connected to the body. So much so, it's been a tradition to burn most of articles of clothes and personal items that belonged to a recently deceased as a part of funeral ritual. It's also interesting to note other cultural-specific elements, such as the concept of travel money for a dead on their way to underworld, or salt and red beans as repellent against spiritual entities. So, here are 7 allegedly true stories from Korea about haunted objects. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by host Anthony. I bought a second-hand denim pants the other day. As I went through them to check, I found something from the pocket. A piece of paper folded into about 2 square centimeters. It can happen from used clothes, so I didn't even bother to check and threw it away. Following day, I went out to see a friend in those pants. After ordering some drinks at a bar, I put my hand in the pocket to take my wallet out and found a piece of paper folded into about 2 square centimeters. Wait, didn't I throw it away? It gave me a chill, so I talked about it to my friend. He's a big mystery supernatural buff, and he got instantly interested. He took the paper from me, unfolded it, and read what was written there. Did I imagine it that I saw his face get a bit pale?
I think you should just ignore it. I'll throw it away this time,
he said and put it in his pocket. I myself dislike anything spooky, so I just let it go as he said. Following day, I heard the news that a friend was hit by a motorbike and had his right leg fractured. I'm usually not superstitious, but somehow I couldn't shake off the feeling that it might have to do with that piece of paper. I visited him at hospital and found him somewhat timid, unlike his usual energetic self. I couldn't help myself but asking about the paper and what he saw from it. Friend first tried to brush it off, that the accident was, well, just an accident. But I persisted, and in the end he told me what was written in the paper. In a tiny handwriting,
"Why are you still alive when I'm dead?"
I work for an architect's office. It may sound glamorous, but in reality, I spend most of my time out on the construction sites dealing with builders. It goes back to last November. Winter set quicker than usual, and it was freezing cold. The most popular choice of clothing for the builders and laborers on the site was what the soldiers call galgari. It's a padded inner layer designed to be worn underneath the army uniform, but soldiers on off-duty time would often wear galgari alone because it's more comfortable that way. It's one of the quintessential looks of a Korean soldier in his trainer pants and khaki kalkari, an image any Korean guy who served in the military would remember with a kind of nostalgia. And some guys would keep wearing it even after the service for its practicality. Anyway, at the end of the day, as I walked down to the parking lot, I saw somebody left a kalkari hung on the branch of a pine tree. Maybe one of the builders had left it there and forgot? I'd been admiring guys' kalkari attire all day long while I myself shivered in my inadequate civilian jacket. And I picked it up from the tree. It was clearly used, and there was a faint trace of an initial on the back too. LSM, if I remember it correctly. But it would be so useful for many cold winter days out on the construction site. My wife wouldn't understand it and taunted me for picking up used clothing of an unknown origin, so I didn't tell her anything, washed it myself, and wore it under my jacket. By some luck, the size fit me perfectly, and an authentic military-issued article too, according to its label. Eventually, wife saw it too and asked about it, but I just made up an excuse that I got it from a colleague. Then I got a bad cold, probably because I smoked out on the balcony just in my pajama pants and kalkari. I hardly ever get a cold usually, and previously thought it a wimp should a man see a doctor for a mere cold. But this one I could not shed off after a month. When the exhausting coughs continued into the second month, I had to visit hospitals and pharmacies, to no avail. It was about then my mother-in-law came to visit. She lives quite far away from us, and came to see and spend some time with her little daughter, my wife. For the couple of weeks she stayed with us, I coughed and was sickly the whole time. One morning I was getting ready for work, putting on the inner layer of trusty kalkari. Then wife asked, "Where did you get that jacket thingy again? It wasn't from your colleague, was it?" I was caught off guard, and wife grilled me to tell the truth. For some reason, she was very serious. I tried to stand my ground, telling her that it was quite difficult to find a genuine kalkari, and it was exactly something I needed. But before I could finish, my mother-in-law joined the conversation. "I've been having the same dream for a few days in a row. A dark figure of a man would appear and tell me, 'Please give me back my jacket. I'm freezing to death.' So I asked my daughter if she or you had picked up a used piece of clothing recently. I presume what you are wearing is the one. Am I wrong?" she said. I've been married for 10 years, and by fact I know my mother-in-law possesses some unusual sense. Call it the third eye, whatever. She was not a shaman or such, but her dreams often proved to have uncanny real-life implication on more than just a few occasions. I had to tell her how I got hold of the kalkari, honestly. "It must have belonged to a deceased. You must give it back, burn the jacket, and offer 2 big bows," she said. So I did as I was told. Burnt the jacket in the fire pit that builders keep on the construction site, and despite wondering stares, I bowed to it twice. Of course, I had to explain them what happened, much to their amusement. Was it just a coincidence that my persistent cough stopped from the following day? I just wonder what was the history of the kalkari, what really happened to its original owner. Before marriage, I often gave Lift, my then girlfriend, back home after the date. Near her place was a junk shop full of various used goods. One day, I felt like checking it out on the way back from my girlfriend's, and there I was strangely drawn when I saw a second-hand keyboard. At the time, I was very much into online computer game and was looking to replace my old and abused keyboard. But even so, looking back, I don't understand myself why I picked it up without a second thought. The price was not so much cheaper than buying it new, nor did I even bother to check its condition properly. Only when I happily brought it back home and unwrapped the thick cling film, I found some keys missing. I could just blame myself. I put it aside and went to bed. I had a dream. In the dream, I was in my room, and all the faces in the photos hanging on my wall were looking down at me and laughing. It was scary enough. Then the room door burst open and entered a middle-aged woman. She shouted in a stern voice,
What do you think you're doing here? How dare!
When I got up, it was still early hours of the morning, and I was soaked in cold sweat. I instinctively knew it was to do with a keyboard I brought in the previous night. I promptly took it out and threw it in the garbage can in the main road. And I didn't experience any such nightmare again. Later in that same morning, I talked to my mom about the dream, and it seemed to ring something in her. Apparently, the middle-aged lady in my dream matched the woman who lived in Mom's local Buddhist temple. She showed her photo to me, and indeed, I couldn't deny the likeness. She was apparently kind of half shaman with spiritual ability. I myself had never met her, but Mom reminded me of the talisman that she gave me to keep in my wallet was drawn by the lady. A talisman that was supposed to fend off passing evil souls and misfortunes. Just a short story that floats around. A woman got a new job. It was very busy and she had to work overtime almost daily. It was exhausting, but the job opportunities were few and far between, and she put up with it. Instead, she decided to at least bring the overflowing work back home. She had got rid of her old desk from her small room when she finished her study, so now she needed another one. By some chance, she saw a desk and matching chair discarded on the street in a neighborhood, and with help from her brother and dad, she managed to bring them into her room. It took a few days till the woman and her family started noticing something was off. It started with her complaining about unusual nightmares and sleep paralysis. In dreams, I see something standing in my room and looking down on me, she would say day after day. Soon the presence manifested in her waking hours too. From a peripheral vision, she would see some shadow, but nothing when she turned to look at it. And since when, the woman herself changed. She would throw unusual bouts of temper outburst and spit out rough swears that her family and friends had never heard from her. When her behavioral issue escalated to her bumping her head to the wall and cut herself, her mother couldn't overlook the situation anymore and brought in a shaman. Shaman had a one look around the woman's room and shouted, "Where did you get the desk?" And the woman, who had been seething and swearing at the shaman to that point, suddenly got calm, almost icy cold, with all her expression washed out from her face. "The desk has been there all the time. Just go if you don't have anything more to say," the woman said. Shaman was assured now that something unholy had come to this household with that desk.
It's the desk. Throw it out right away.
Shaman herself jumped on it like she would do it herself, and father and brother of the woman joined in to drag the desk out.
Wait!
It was the woman's mother who stopped them.
Don't forget the desk chair. Take it out too.
It was only after the desk and chair were brought out to where they were initially found, and the shaman performed a little cleansing ritual, that the mother explained what she saw. As the shaman and the man of the family were busy to deal with the desk, the mother noticed her daughter grinning behind her hands covering her mouth. Turned out it was actually the desk chair that was haunted, but the cunning ghost tried to mislead the shaman by marking its trace on the desk. It's what really happened to me. I was 11 then. A day before the New Year's Day, my dad gave me 10,000 won, about $8 by today, but it worth much more back then. Upon happily taking the money, I found something written on the bill in red ink. Travel money, it read. I wondered, but didn't care much. 10,000 won was still enough to buy a handheld game player, so I straight ran to a shop to get myself one. On the New Year's Day, we went to my grandpa's. I remember I played the new game all the way in the car. As usual, I bowed to adults in the family to wish them a good fortune for the new year, and in return they gave me pocket money. Among them was a 10,000 won note from my aunt. I was frozen when I took a look at the note though, because there it was written, travel money, in red ink. I was pretty sure that it was the same handwriting too. I didn't know what to make of it. That night I went to bed with that 10,000 won note in my pocket. I was to ask Mom about what's written there the following day. I had a hard time to fall asleep somehow because of certain sense of anxiety. And as soon as I fell asleep,
I need that money to go home. Give me back.
I heard a woman's voice saying. I got instantly terrified. I knew it was just a nightmare, but couldn't help myself from running away. No matter how fast and hard I ran, I couldn't get away from this itchy sensation following me. In the end, I turned back to look, and the sight of the woman was so shocking that I woke up with a startle. Her face had no features at all, no eyes, nose, or mouth, just long, billowing hairs. But it was just a dream, wasn't it? Just a silly nightmare. I sighed of relief and lifted my head. And there was a long shadow of a person with long hair. I couldn't dare to look back to see to whom the shadow belonged. I lied back down and clenched my eyes shut, praying it was all but a dream. But as soon as I did, I was back in the dream, and the woman was chasing me again. I think it repeated at least several times. Woke up from the dream with a startle, saw the shadow, pulled back in the dream only to get chased. Then, during a chase, the 10,000 won note fell from my pocket, and I could finally get away from the horrible woman. In the morning, I checked my pocket, and the money was really gone. Had the ghost got what she wanted then in the end? It was only later that I learned. Traditionally, some people would burn some money at a funeral for the deceased to use it as the trouble money down to the underworld. But I still can't imagine how such a note could come back in circulation and ended up with me, and how it found its way back to me the second time. I had a close friend from my cram school. Since when I noticed him losing his vitality and looking more and more gaunt. I had to ask in the end what was up with him. His eyes got almost teary instantly.
I can't live like this anymore,
he said with a shaky voice, but wouldn't want to explain further. It took quite some time to persuade him to open up.
I get nightmares,
was what he said in the end. What kind of nightmares? I said.
It's the same dream every time. I see 3 people in my room, a boy and man and woman. I can't see their faces clearly, but their attire look a bit exotic. The boy has a baby xylophone. He would look back at the man and woman holding up the xylophone mallets and say 1, 2, and then start hammering xylophone. But soon he would cough blood up and fall down on the floor. The man and the woman would only laugh out loud while the boy's face get distorted with the pain. And this creepy dream repeats night after night. I'm too afraid to fall asleep now,
friend said. Suddenly an idea struck me. Hey, do you remember? We once picked up a xylophone dumped on the street. Was that a month ago? You took it back home, didn't you? Could that have something to do with your nightmare? I said.
Oh. I just put it aside and totally forgot about it. Do you think? Could it be haunted or something?
Friend said. Maybe you should tell your parents.
No, I don't get along with Mom nowadays since my grade dropped. I'm gonna deal with it myself. Will you help me?
So, the following day I went to his place. He had taken the xylophone out and put it on the shoe shelf by the front door already. Maybe it was just me projecting, but I must say the xylophone looked creepy, as if something there was looking back at me. I didn't even want to hold it with my hand, so we put it in a paper bag and went out to a quiet alleyway a few blocks away to discard it. Well, job done. You owe me one, I said to the friend as we turned back.
1, 2. 1, 2.
We heard a little boy's voice saying behind us. We didn't even look back. We just ran away screaming. When we barely ran a few hundred meters, my friend had to stop because his nose bled. But fortunately, nothing further seemed to be wrong with him, nor his nightmare returned again. One thing I should add is, on that day before I went over to my friend, I got calls from all sorts of people, from mom, dad, younger brother, and even a random spam call. Even on the way to his, some neighbors who had never exchanged more than casual good morning had to stop me to chat me up. Looking back, it feels to me as if some force was trying to stop me to go to see my friend and dump the cursed xylophone. There was a period of time that I and my mom were really at each other's throat. Alright, I was then a high schooler, and any teenager could develop some conflict with their parents. But by then, I already had a most turbulent adolescent behind me, and thus far kept an okay relationship with mom. So the sudden rise of daily argument and hostility was unexpected and curious. I just couldn't stand the sight of mom, and she also returned my hostility in almost the same intensity. But that wasn't even all of the sudden change that struck my family. Mom's hair started falling off like a cancer patient on chemo, and she almost became bald in a matter of a week, while I started seeing things. When I sit at my desk studying, I saw a shadow passing from my peripheral vision. "Is that you, Dad?" I would call out, and I would get no response. What was it then that I saw? It wasn't even just something gliding through, but a figure distinctively walking past by. I didn't know at the time because Mom and I didn't really talk with each other than shouting matches. But Mom saw similar apparitions too then. As she prepared dinner in the kitchen, she would feel somebody walking past behind her. But when she turned to look, there would be nothing. After a few weeks of such hellish arguments and shadow figures around us, Mom called her grandmother. Mom's grandmother was a shaman. By then she was retired and also never mentioned anything particularly shamanic to me, so I didn't give much thought about what she was. But anyway, she was a shaman.
I see. Some sort of a stick made of metal. Did you pick something from somewhere and brought it back with you recently? Throw it out, whatever it is, right away, and sprinkle sea salt around the house,
Grandmother said to Mom. Mom couldn't think of anything particular, but when she asked Dad, he did pick up a mop handle dumped on our street. Mom threw it out and placed the little pouches full of salt and red beans at various corners of the house. About a month later, when Mom's hair started to grow back and our relationship also became much more peaceful, Mom took the pouches to discard and found salt inside all turned black. According to Mom's grandmother, any second-hand object, even without a particularly tragic or unfortunate history, takes up the spiritual energy from its previous owner, and it could have a negative impact, a clash with a new owner. If one must bring a used stuff in, at least leave it in the toilet overnight to avoid any potential trouble. But I forgot the advice over the years and repeated the same mistake recently. I bought a second-hand bean bag for my flat. On the day it was delivered, I was rather tired, so I just left it in the living room and went to bed. In the dream, I saw a skinny, almost bony woman crawling around in my place, moaning,
"It hurts. My tummy hurts."
Her pain was so palpable that I almost felt breathless just watching her. Then a guy walked out of my bathroom. He closely resembled my dad, but his sharp eyes were so chilling. He said names of my friends and relatives and said they were all doing fine. I was then so breathless that I couldn't even utter a word in response and could just glare back. Then he said he should open the front door because he had to let somebody in. Indeed, loud footsteps were heard outside the door. But then I reminded myself of what Mom once told me, that I should never open a door in a dream, never open a door to enter somewhere, because it represents a coffin. In desperation, I bit my tongue hard, and could wake up from the dream. It was so unusually vivid and unpleasant dream that I called Mom to talk about it.
Did you bring in something dubious from somewhere?
Was her first question. I thought of the beanbag, and indeed I realized the woman in the dream crawled about the corner where I had left the beanbag. I gave the beanbag a good shower of sea salt, and thankfully, the nightmare didn't return again. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Actually, such a taboo as in today's stories does not really meet the zeitgeist. For the environment, we'd better encourage second-hand buying more. Almost all my household, from furniture to dishes to objets d'art, were purchased second-hand on eBay. And so far, touch wood, nothing spooky has happened. So I hope you don't feel any way discouraged to buy second-hand because of today's stories. Just have a bag of sea salt ready. Just in case. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a thumbs up and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. If you are specifically interested in Korean culture or just a fan of general spooky, bizarre subjects, my channel would be the place to stay. If you'd support me more directly, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, and there's also a Super Thanks option here on YouTube for a small donation. Thank you. Until next Sunday, stay safe and take care.